Hello, folks, and welcome to Totally Tanked, the tankiest podcast in Tankville. I'm Rob.
I'm John, and I have killed off my teleprompter. So here we go. Yes, you're watching the old O2 Human show about tanks in a time of AI-generated everything. And this is episode 81, recording and streaming live on 25 April 2026. Today's episode is about the Lord of Battle, the M1 Abrams. We will be talking about recent events in the second half. But if you just want to wave the stars and stripes and go, "Hoorah, America!" The first half will have plenty for you. Before we go further, I just want to dedicate this episode to my old dog Orwell, who crossed the Rainbow Bridge 2 days ago. We miss him terribly, but I hope wherever he is, the kitchen countertops are low and the cyclists are slow enough for him to catch.
Here's to Orwell.
Anyway, Rob, do you want to take it from there for a minute?
Alrighty, it's our second episode recorded and streamed on Anzac Day, and while we encourage you to observe a minute's silence in your own time, I'm just going to quickly share Australia's answer to Chamberlain on the Little Round Top, Lieutenant Bethune's special orders to No. 1 Section as they were digging in to face the German Spring Offensive in March 1918. Remember, with the collapse of Russia, 70 fresh German divisions had been transferred to the Western Front to try and end the war before the American forces arrived. Bethune was digging his section in to face that colossal onslaught on which the Germans were gambling the entire war. Special orders to No. 1 Section, 13th of the 3rd, 18.
1. This position will be held, and the section will remain here until relieved. 2. The enemy cannot be allowed to interfere with this program. 3. If the section cannot remain here alive, it will remain here dead, but in any case, it will remain here. Should any man through shell shock or other cause attempt to surrender, he will remain here dead. Should all guns be blown out, the section will use Mills grenades and other novelties. 6. Finally, the position, as stated, will be held. FP Bethune, Lieutenant. Back in 1918, this caused quite a stir and was widely circulated to American forces as an example of what trench standing orders should be.
Right.
Okay, looks like we need to change the batteries in the teleprompter, so sorry folks. Rob, do you want to read some comments there?
Hello folks, and we've got Alexander Hodge, we've got the poll going. The Abrams is the greatest tank or was the greatest tank, as we've got a number of votes in there for that so far. Alexander Hodge, Tasman, Hans Vaughanhut, Jonas Bond, Thomas Chrysanism, Reservoir 120, Annihilate, and Was. G'day, Was. So let's have to go back to everything. Yep, there
we go. All right.
All right.
Okay, Rob, you ready to, let's get on with the show.
Moving on.
Yes.
As the words say.
You can get our Totally Tanked merchandise. Look, we've got the new Abrams t-shirt on hats, mugs, miniskirts, etc. from redbubble.com. Just make sure to look for Totally Tanked. And if you like the show, please hit the like button, leave relevant reviews, and on YouTube, we're here leaving a comment is the gold standard for help right now, so just drop anything down there and help us out.
Now, as we said, today we'll be talking about that most Australian of tanks, the Abrams. Australia is on to its second batch of Abrams after already having them for 19 years, and I don't see us buying anything new or other tanks or being able to afford them in the next 20, unless our new ones get blown up in some misadvised Middle East war. So I see them as being Australia's tank. Named after General Creighton Abrams, Chief of Staff of the Army from 1972 to 1974.
So it's weird they missed Westmoreland somehow.
And I think Desiree was probably a little bit annoyed with that his name wasn't catchier.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you've got to have a shorter name, I guess. The M1 Abrams, or just Abrams, that's the simple bit. When you say Abrams, people know what you're talking about. The US Army figured out they better name it themselves from the get-go and not let someone else do it unofficially, or have it confused with all the other pieces of M1 equipment in the US military.
There's nothing the US likes like naming something an M1 or an M3.
Yep. Or an M2. But don't worry, we'll get into the upgrades and variants and why you should at least call it an M1A1 and all the M1A2 SEPs, SCPs that you can think of later on. Right.
I like when you get the tusks as well, it really gets exciting. Or the AIMs for the Abrams Integrated management.
Yep.
Yeah.
And AIDs for the digital versions of the yes. Anyway, stats designed by Chrysler Defense, now General Dynamics Land Systems, designed from 1972 to 1976. Unit cost started at $4.3 million for an M1A1 in 1989, and now up to $24 million for an export version of the M1A2 SEP V3, produced from 1979 and still being upgraded. New hulls.
$24 million is going to be a pretty expensive tank, but yeah,
it's got a lot of stuff on it.
Yeah,
right? Got a lot of
so much stuff on it,
and a lot of new technology. New hulls won't be.
Sorry, I just want to say Hans asked what's in the beer tube, and it is it's Anzac Day. How could we not put this Victoria Bitter in there? So yeah, that's
Australian of
that's
beers.
what we've got in there.
New hulls won't be coming out anytime soon, though. So they've built approximately 10,300. Weight for the M60. Oh, sorry, not the M60. Sorry, the M1 was 60 tons. The M1A1 was 63 tons. The M1A2 SEP V2, 71 tons. The SEP V3 was 73 tons. Plus, if you throw in another 5 tons, if you put on the trophy system, or even more if you throw on the Tusk armor package,
which is the urban survival kit.
Yes.
Yeah.
The hull length is 26 feet without not including the barrel. 12 feet wide and 8 feet high. Crew of 4: commander, gunner, loader, and driver. This is a fun one. I'm glad they included in some stats. Was gun elevation was plus 20 degrees and 10 degrees depression. So gun traverse, very quick traverse of 9 seconds for 360 degrees.
Now, just quickly, in the comments, Tasman is impugning the Victoria Bitter for giving a nasty hangover. Back in the day, you were correct, but since the Japanese took over all our breweries, they fixed it.
Where's our tall American counterpart? Oh, yes, the chieftain I'm assuming he's talking about. Well, one day.
Yes, yes. The chieftain has been a little busy. We did have a chat with him, and we couldn't.
America's busy. The American military is busy at this point in time in life, John.
It seems, but anyway, the stars didn't quite align. But anyway,
maybe one day. All right, armor. It's got the composite Chobham armor, and sometimes using depleted uranium. Which is always fun. The main armament of the M1 was the 105mm L52 rifled gun, the M68A1 with 55 rounds, so it was the American equivalent of the L7. Then the M1A1 and the M1A2 has the 120mm L44 M256 smoothbore gun with carrying 40 rounds.
It was quite a cock-up to produce 3,000 of them with the gun that they quickly realised wasn't big enough and needed to upgun the tank.
But they actually knew they were going to the 120 is the main thing.
They made room for it,
Well, then they said, look, we're building this thing, so we're going to put in the 105 now, but when we get to, when we have the abilities to throw in the 120, then we're going to do that. So we're building it fit of 4, but not width. Secondary armaments. So you got one Marduce 50 cal, for the commander with 900 rounds, 2 7.62 M240s with 10,000 rounds, 1 pendulum mounted and 1 coaxial. And then if you listen to the chieftain's recollections from Iraq, they also got another LMG that they strapped onto the roof of the turret for the loader or commander to use. The crew's personal M4s and pistols and a shotgun, but he said no to the bayonets. They tried to get him to sign for. I
was just watching this before we started the show, and he said, if the tank and the 120 and the 50 cal and the like 6 other machine guns we've been issued haven't sufficed this day, we don't think the bayonets are going to change it.
And if I can't just run over the problem. He did think about taking his sabre. He said, well, his sabre's too expensive and he doesn't want to get broken. All right, on some tanks you can also get the counter sniper anti-material mount, or CSAM, however you want to say that, which puts another 50 cal in a coax position on top of the main barrel so that the gunner can then use the precision of the main gun to take out a target without blowing up the entire building. Engine, it's got the Honeywell AGT 1500 multi-fuel turbine engine, gas turbine engine, 1500 horsepower, except no substitutes.
It says multi-fuel, and we've always thought it's multi-fuel, but it is worth noting that when Australia shipped its diesel-tuned Abrams to Ukraine, the Ukrainians got extremely excited because they hadn't been able to get the jet fuel Abrams that they've been given from the US to work on diesel. So it's not that simple to change. as in it's beyond the capacity of Ukraine, who are not totally inept.
No, they're very good at adapting for a rugged environment. As a case of some equipment is not able to adapt with them. High hardness steel torsion bars with rotary shock absorbers.
I like the rotary shock absorber. That sounds very similar to Christie's suspension to me in a funny way. But anyway,
fuel capacity of 500 gallons. Operational range of the M1A2 on road is 265 miles. So that's a lot of fuel for only 265 miles. Or cross country, 93 to 124 miles.
But remember, when the US goes to war with these things, and they did it, in the Second Gulf War. They literally are building a fuel pipeline out to the jumping off point. So that one thing the US is extremely good at is building fuel pipelines. It's under-remarked on that in D-Day they actually built an undersea pipeline. It was called Pluto onto the Normandy beachheads.
From England.
Yeah, from England.
Yeah. All right, maximum speed, the M1A1 on road is 45 miles per hour, and the M1A2 on road is 42 miles per hour. They've governed the engines so they don't tear everything apart inside the transmission and everything else, but it could go faster, and sometimes you hear stories about the soldiers taking out the governors, and so they go that much faster. The main aspect is that the gas turbine, the torque is so high that it accelerates up to speed very quickly compared to diesel engines.
We need to talk about the torque though, because the turbine spins at phenomenal cyclic rates. So it's the gearbox that's providing the torque. Although I accept that the power is coming from the engine. So the thing's spinning around extremely fast, and then the gearbox is taking that energy. But yeah.
All right, off-road, it goes 25 miles per hour. All right, so design and development. Now, we've shared the story of the MBT-70 as part of the Leopard 2 episode, in that it was a joint development in the 1960s by West Germany and the US to build a new generation tank to replace their Leopards and Pattons in order to counter the new generation of Soviet T-62 tanks and to standardize parts and logistics support, which the Germans said, why don't you buy our Leopards? The design...
No, we will not do that. The purpose of the exercise is enriching the shareholders of American weapons companies. It is not actually to deliver a functional tank or work in an alliance system. Come on, guys, let's get serious.
Yeah. The design included a 152mm XM150 gun/missile launcher to fire the Shillelagh missile or conventional ammunition. All the crew mounted in the turret, including the driver, who would have their own pod that always pointed forwards. Hydropneumatic suspension to enable the tank to kneel. When West Germany withdrew from the project, it became the XM803, a cutback version of the MBT-70 project, but even that was too expensive and was cancelled in 1971. The next cab off the rank was the XM815 under Major General William Desabry, who we talked about during our Hellcat episode number 37.
He was a dude. I mean, he had a long and illustrious career. Yeah. And, there really should be a Desabry, but I reckon they think they can't pronounce it.
No,
so,
just like me. And his actions at the Battle of the Bulge, where his experience with the mobility of the Hellcat, stopping the slow advance of the Panzer IVs, was instrumental in his thinking about the high manoeuvrability that was needed for the Army's new tank. And for those who cannot remember that episode, it's possibly because it was inadvertently set to private for a long time, so make sure you go back and give it a listen. It also includes an interview with the chieftain,
the tall American,
at Oz Armour Fest 2022 after he ran over the trail arms of an 88 in the T-72. Desabry was briefed about some fancy new British armour being developed that was effective against shaped charges and heat rounds, and was very interested. So some balked at the idea of 2 feet thick armour when the M60 steel armour was only about 4 inches thick. But this Chobham stuff seemed to work in tests. The XM815 project was renamed the XM1 in 1972, and the Army went to market for a design that could survive a hit from a Soviet tank at 2,600 feet at 30 degrees.
2,600 feet?
800 metres.
Jesus.
I make the effort for American tanks. I do things in feet and miles per hour.
Oh, right? I mean, yards. Yards would have worked.
Well, divide that by 3. That's how many yards. Yeah, okay. At 30 degrees from either side. I wonder if they knew about at this stage, I wonder if they knew about the 125mm gun, as they may not have seen the T-64 or the T-72 yet, and only been going off the 115mm gun of the T-62. It was to be So that's a question I don't know.
Okay. I mean, there is this thing that we need to remember, which is one, the US Army ground forces were a bit of a backwater after World War II because everyone thought the war was going to go nuclear very quickly. And then we've talked about this before, but Yom Kippur, the 1973 Arab-Israeli War, demonstrated that conventional forces still had significant use in a non-nuclear conflict.
As long as it was backed up by nukes.
Yeah, well, there's that. But, you know, and then the US got serious, and, you know, that's when the Bradley and the Abrams really went into development, and they got incredibly lucky that the British had come up with an armour scheme that could actually be effective against large anti-tank missiles and big discarding Sabot rounds. So the stars kind of aligned, and then the Abrams emerged out of this conjunction.
All right. This new design was to be armed with an L7 105mm rifle gun, or the American equivalent, and a 20mm chain gun, and only be 53 tons, which is actually up from the 45 tons it was started out as. The chain gun requirement was dropped, and in 1973, Chrysler and General Motors both quickly put in designs. The Chrysler had the AGT 1500 gas turbine engine, and the GM went with a 1500 horsepower diesel engine. Prototypes were built, and in 1976, when testing, they went to testing where the GM option was favoured for its slightly cheaper price, being more fuel efficient, better armour coverage, fire control, and stabilisation. It was expected that GM would get the nod for the contract, but Defence Secretary Donny Rumsfeld said, let's give Chrysler another 4 months to sort out a design. At the same time, prototype Leopard 2s came over from West Germany for testing, and Army got some ideas from those.
I'd be a little annoyed by if I was the Germans. They thought they were sending them for testing to maybe America be buying them, and the Americans like, oh, that's a good idea. We'll take that. Thank you for your tank.
All right. GM put forward a new design with the gas turbine engine and the ability to swap out the 105mm gun for those with one of those new 120mm smoothbore guns that the West Germans had.
Sorry, Rob, I'm just going to... everyone's making great comments, but Tasman's made particularly interesting ones saying that there was a problem that had to be rectified early. The blowout panels in the bustle had been built for the 105mm ammunition, and it took longer than it should have to be changed for the larger ammunition. So there you go.
No, but I mean, they couldn't hold as many rounds. This is why it could hold 55 105s, but only 40 of the 120s. So yeah, you'd have to make your bustle longer, I guess, because your rounds are longer. And if you
you got to rate it for a different round as well. But yeah.
All right. Whilst
hang on, I just quickly, Rob, while we've stopped, I want to note. The slideshow for this video, for those watching on the video, is amazing because this is the best photographed tank that's ever existed. And part of what makes it so awesome is that the US Army, as you know, the largest socialist organisation on earth, releases all of their pictures in the public domain, so we can just hoover them all up and use them. And every picture of an Australian M1 we've got is taken by an American service person, because they release it in public domain. So well done, America. Go you.
All right. So
and Beckett's joined the show, and he's apparently allowed to be here, so that's good.
Yay.
Good work, Beckett.
All right. So they were figuring out how to fit in the 120mm smoothbore the West Germans had, and the GM version was pushing up the price a bit. Whilst Chrysler figured out how to cut their costs and put in a diesel engine. Even though the GM design looked better on paper, the contract was awarded to Chrysler. And there's all the talk of a stitch-up, propping up a failing company and kickbacks. And let's face it, it's probably true. Today's graft and corruption is nothing new. So.
I feel like the scale of today is another level. But graft and corruption's been around as long as humans have been organising. Right. So, yeah.
Right. So Chrysler built 11 prototype XM1s by 1978, and they were put to the test where they found a lot of issues, because that's the point of testing. As issues were identified and dealt with, the project came together on the design of the XM1, and the M1 then went into production in 1979. If you don't include the years taken up by the MBT 70 project, the M1 actually did okay in terms of military procurement, far better than the M2 Bradley at any rate.
To be fair to the Bradley, but by the time the US had to fight a conventional ground war in Iraq in 1991, The programs had actually all delivered the pieces of the greatest military in the world.
If something happened during the Cold War that it was all built for...
Yeah, that wouldn't have been good.
No. I don't think anybody would have been happy with that. Anyway, now we'll get on a few notes. So look, I know there will be many more of you with more knowledge and experience of the Abrams, and we're going to get a few things wrong or skip things that you think are important. So feel free to let us know by getting in the comments.
Speaking of the comments, Beckett has asked how many canister rounds could it fit, and Mehdi has answered, and Mehdi's a former tanker, that's the same size round as the others, so it's just a case of sorting out your magazine.
There you go. Because let's face it, this is definitely a tank we'll be revisiting in a couple of years as it and the world changes. Yes, it's one of the big ones. All right.
So we are coming. There's going to be a revisited at some point. It's taken.
This is
6 years, no, 7 years now, Rob, to get to the M1. But we're probably going to revisit in the next few years.
Yeah. Now that we've got our formats sorted,
we'll do 73 Easting in great detail in a future episode. I just want to note, just for those on the video, we've got it up. The operators. There is a solid belt in Eastern Europe of countries bordering Russia. That have the M1. It's of note.
Yeah. All right. Designed to defeat the motor rifle divisions with their T-72s coming through the Fulda Gap or across the North German plain. Luckily for everyone, it didn't happen yet. The AGT 1500 gas turbine engine sucks down fuel like it's going out of fashion. You need to have very good logistics to keep it going in the field, as even with all the digital fuel management programs that they've introduced over the last 40 years, it still burns a lot of gas, even when you're idling, just to keep the electrics going. It has great acceleration from the standing start, weighs 1 tonne less than the equivalent diesel engine, whilst it's louder than a diesel when standing next to the tank. The high-pitched whine of the gas turbine does not travel as far, so it's much stealthier at range. It's been designed to be quickly replaceable as long as you have a serviceable spare to swap it in, as it's complex to work on. Rated to start in very cold weather, down to 40 degrees Celsius and Fahrenheit.
Minus 40.
And minus 40 Celsius and Fahrenheit, which is where the two cross over, whereas diesel only goes down to about negative 20 Celsius. The gas turbine did have issues with sucking in sand in the desert, but was dealt with eventually. But that was dealt with.
It's always about the filters.
Yeah.
The big thing when it went to Iraq was that it had terrible reliability rates the first time, 1990, 91. It turned out when the troops knew that they were actually going to have to fight, they started following the service manuals, Rob. Suddenly its reliability became extremely good because the crews were actually doing the things they should have been doing all along.
Auxiliary power units, or APU, they were built and installed to provide power to the electrics when the vehicle is stationary.
And we have got a picture in the slideshow, and for those listening, totallytank.net, all the slides will be there. Some of the early APUs just looked like a refrigerator bolted on the back of the tank.
A beer fridge bolted on the back of the tank, yes.
Pretty big beer fridge, but yeah.
I mean, you get a case in there.
You're the money bags. You've got bigger beer fridges than me. All right.
I don't have a beer fridge at all. I think you've got about 3, don't you?
Only one.
With its own tap on it.
Yeah, well, it's got a beer tap on it, yeah.
All right. Previous versions of the APU were installed either on the rear of the tank or on the rear of the bustle. So, as John was saying, it's like a little beer fridge on the back of the tank, or they on the turret bustle, which then took away the crew's storage space, which they didn't like. So then they removed the APU and just burned more gas. It's not like they're paying for the fuel. So now the US Army has installed the auxiliary power unit at the rear of the turret. At the rear of the turret bustle, and installed stowage racks as well, so that they get the best of both worlds, and the crew don't take it off.
Look, they've got to have somewhere to put their esky, or a cooler, as Americans call it.
Yeah, we do have a photo.
We've got a couple of photos of eskies in the bustle, and keeping your drinks cold.
Yeah, a bright blue esky sitting on top of the turret as a Marine M1 is firing in Fallujah. There's the APU now on the screen.
Anyway.
All right.
Madness.
Yes. Depleted uranium. Fun stuff. or DU. When we think of uranium, we think of radiation and dying of cancer. So why would the US want to surround their tanks with depleted uranium armor? Are they trying to get someone to transform into the Hulk? Probably not, but I'm not sure I'm sure they'd take it if it did happen. Supposedly, depleted uranium doesn't give you cancer, but they don't like you asking too many questions about what depleted uranium dust kicked up by your tank getting hit by an RPG does to your lungs. The main thing is it's more dense than most other steel or iron or lead, and so it's providing greater protection for the same thickness of armour. But at the same time, it's much heavier than the equivalent armour in steel. Depleted uranium APF-SDS darts are also denser than the tungsten penetrators, making it a much better penetrator.
There's some just really weird properties of depleted uranium as well, where it self-sharpens as it penetrates. So as
and set things on fire.
It sets things on fire when it's hot as well. But just as it penetrates, it keeps fragmenting so that the point remains pointy, which is a quite remarkable property for a material. And you know, everyone knows that the depleted uranium is the good stuff, and if you can't get that, you're second rate.
We don't have it.
But on the other hand, your crews in combat get all sorts of nasty diseases from being around it. So
it's as I say, it's when if you don't hit it, you're fine. But once it gets hit by a round, that's
when it's in the armor. But you know, when you're firing it, and then your infantry are having to be around the where the rounds fragmented into the air. It would appear, and I would believe it. You know, uranium is horrible stuff.
Yeah.
There is no reason to believe it's safe to be breathing the dust of it.
And the last thing about depleted uranium is it's a byproduct of uranium enrichment. So the US has plenty of it lying around doing nothing, making it very cheap. The US uses it in their Abrams armour and rounds, but do not provide it in the tanks they export. The Abrams is air portable in a C-17 or a C-5 Galaxy.
Well, let's remember the US has not built either of those planes in many years.
Yep. So what they've got, because they've shut down those factories.
Yep.
And they're not coming back. The gun breech does not return to a set point after firing, so the loader needs to work to get the next round in, depending on the elevation or depression of the gun.
I think they call that return to battery.
Probably.
Yeah. On the other hand, if the gun's staying pointing where it's meant to be pointing, has a lot of benefits for.
But if it's quick enough to it
depends how fast it slews. But
I mean, these things are hydraulic; they go pretty quick. Much quicker than a person would, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you would assume that there's no position it can be in that the loader can't actually reach into, but it can get awkward for the loader. I'll totally accept that.
Yeah. A significant aspect of the high protection of the Abrams is the blast blowout panels for the ammunition storage, with 34 ready rounds stored in the bustle behind an armoured door, with blowout blast panels in the roof to direct any explosions away from the interior of the tank and the crew. 6 more rounds are then stored in the rear hull box behind another armoured panel between the turret and the engine. So yes, if you get through I think if you actually get through 17 rounds, then you've got to muck around trying to get
transferring it to ready storage.
Well, transferring the ones at the rear of the bustle forwards, and then if you get through those 17, then getting out the 6 in the hull really bad. And as the chieftain says, nobody actually put any rounds in there, and they just store stuff in there that they want to get past customs. Models of the Abrams. Normally we'd get into the different models of the Abrams.
So just quickly, Mehdi has noted the difficulties of chasing a bouncing breech trying to load when the stabilizer is on and it's rough ground. The loader would be earning his pay that day.
So is that when it does or doesn't return to?
Well, it is when it's. The gun is staying on target.
Right.
Yeah.
So the tank is moving, but the gun is staying where it's pointing at.
Yeah.
And so hadn't thought of that. Good point. Yep. All right. Models. Now we'd normally get onto the different models of the Abrams much later in the episode, but it's such a distinctive timeline of changes to the vehicle, like we did with the Leopard 2, that we'll address it early, so you know what we're talking about when we're going over what the models. Where they were deployed and where and when and what they were doing. So, the M1, the original from 1980 with the 105mm rifled gun, 3200 built, Then we have the M1 IP, the improved version, with a 50% increase in the armor thickness of the turret.
That's a lot of extra armor. That's a real
Well, they went from like
real criticism of the original model, but yeah.
They went from like 600 mil equivalent to 900 millimeter equivalent. Plus a better turret bustle for the crew to store their kit in. 894 of those were built.
Then the M1A1, which is kind of the classic.
Yeah, it entered service in 1986. Now with the 120 millimeter smoothbore cannon, with upgraded armor, NBC overpressure system, and GPS. 4,700 hulls built from 1985 to 1992. Mostly analog controls, i.e. switches and wires. Then you go on to the M1A1 HA, or heavy armor, which is where you get the installation of the depleted uranium armor in the armor. Then we go on to the M1A1 HC, or heavy common, which has improved depleted uranium armor package installed along with a digital engine control to save fuel when it's not doing anything. Next we get on to the M1A1D, or digital, an upgrade to the M1A1 heavy common to bring it in line with the M1A2 SEP, but only applied to 2 battalions.
SEP was what, service extension program or something like that?
Yeah, we'll get onto that in a sec. But only applied to 2 battalions of 44 tanks each, probably for the time. Replacing analog comms with digital. So basically, they took some of the older tanks, took them from analog to digital, but at that stage they already had the M1A2s, who were already digital, so I was just improving those. So they did that for 2 battalions. M1A1 AIM V1, so introduced in the late 90s to increase the lifespan of the M1A1s by adding thermal sights, a tank telephone, improved comms, and blue force tracking. So you can say,
trying not to shoot so many of your allies.
Yeah. All right, M1A1 AIM V2, or M1, also called the M1A1 SA, situational awareness, introduced in the late 2000s to improve thermal sights and better comms.
A lot of the European M1s were the SAs.
Yes.
But yeah.
And improve thermal sights and better comms, along with the ability to mount the Tusk 1 armor package. And that's the, as John was saying before, it's the tank urban
survival kit.
Yeah. Then we got the M1A1 FEP, Fire Enhancement Package, a package to improve the Marine Corps Abrams for day and night fighting and target acquisition. Then we jump on to the M1A2, which entered service in 1992 and provides a thermal sight for the commander, hunter-killer abilities, improved depleted uranium armor components, and mostly digital control. So when we say hunter-killer, it means that the gunner can be firing at one target, the commander can be
designating the next target.
And as soon as the gunner fires at the first target, the gunner will slew around to the second target straight away. So basically you hunt one, or you kill one, and then you hunt the second one.
It's been a significant criticism of the British Challengers that up until I think the most recent, the Challenger 3, they didn't have hunter-killer. And it was widely thought that the idea that the commander could be pipping out a series of targets made the tank a lot more efficient in servicing those targets. Rob, Jonas has asked which Abrams version was used in Desert Storm.
M1A1s.
Yeah, there we go.
We'll get on to. All right, but we'll get on to how all that happened as well.
Oh, History of Everything's joined us. Great shirt choices. Yeah, thank you. Redbubble.com, search for Totally Tanked.
There you go. All right, then we get on to the M1A2 SEP, or System Enhancement Package. There you go, that's what it stands for, which provided more improvements to the depleted uranium armor components with graphite coating. I'm assuming that's to stop it spitting off dust into your crew's lungs. New thermal sights for the gunner. And then we get on to the M1A2 SEP V2, where they install the Common Remote Weapons Station, which is the commander's remote weapons station. So the crew? Crow. Yep. That's the word.
Common Remote Operated Weapons Station.
Yep,
Crow.
crows.
There we go.
Yep. Provided them colour monitors.
Fancy!
rather than black and green.
Colour TVs. Woo!
And improved operating systems, so Windows XP maybe.
What year are we talking about here?
I can't remember.
Okay. But I mean, it is funny because, you know,
it wouldn't have been Windows, is the point being, but it would have been a new operating
system. But we are literally surrounded by flat panel screens right now, doing all sorts of things to make the studio work. And to think that, you know, it wasn't that long ago that any monitor needed to have, you know, a foot of depth at least behind it. Yeah,
2 feet of depth.
And you know, and the color was a luxury. It's worth remembering with this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. The SEP V2 was also provided better side and hull front armor, ERA for the Tusk armor, and better transmission, as it's now weighing over 72 tons. So that's why you need the
heavier and heavier and heavier, and the bridges start collapsing underneath. No, we're just going to have more stuff, another 5 tons.
Yeah. The M1A2T is a SEP V2 with some SEP V3 features as requested by Taiwan.
Which is funny because they never actually sold it to them, but
they've got them.
Oh, okay.
Last year.
There was the
108. Yeah.
The selling of weapons to Taiwan has been a series of betrayals.
Yeah.
But anyway,
by everybody involved. But anyway, as some of the features as requested by Taiwan without the depleted uranium armor. All right. Then we get on to the the M1A2 SEP V3 or the M12C.
Sorry, M1A2C.
Yes.
But generally you see it referred to as M1A2 SEP V3, which is kind of the current state-of-the-art and deployed Abrams.
But now I think they changed their mind at some stage rather than going C's and D's and whatever else.
I think the M1A2C was when they were thinking they were going to go for another continuation model before they decided to do the E3.
Well, they did look at doing a D. But anyway, the SEP V3 is the latest and greatest of upgrades to the Abrams. It's got improved power distribution, so plugging in your iPod won't blow out your electrics, better comms and vehicle health management, easier line replacement modules for easier maintenance, ammo data links to use airburst rounds, counter IED armor packages, so basically they stop people being able to use, basically they jam mobile phones around them, better forward-looking infrared, FLIR, better profile, lower profile for the Crows, newer armor, and an auxiliary power unit that doesn't take away the crew's bustle rack. Now, the M1A2 SEP V4 was going to have lethality and target.
We've always got to upgrade the lethality. Everyone wants more lethality, Rob.
and target acquisition upgrades, so it could identify, target, and kill quicker. However, the project was cancelled in 2023 as it was just adding weight onto an already overburdened frame, and the Army decided they needed to go back to the drawing board and start designing from scratch rather than whacking more things on that just would weigh more, take up more space, and need more power, all the while being locked into a 1980s hull and wiring structure. Then we get on to the Abrams X, which
does come down to, Alan, thank you for your first comment on the episode. You were right. There have been various times where they've realised they can strip 5 tons of wiring off the tank and go for a more modern infrastructure. And, you know, it's striking as we watch the photos going through this that what a very clean vehicle in its origin has just been encrusted with systems, and someone's got to polish all the lenses on all those sensors. I mean, it's and make sure they're all working and replace them when they don't. It's crazy. Anyway,
Abrams X, concept tank with an uncrewed turret, autoloader, hybrid diesel engine. Diesel electric engine, sorry.
You know, I didn't put any photos of Abrams X in the slideshow because it was a dead end.
Yeah. There's parts of it. And a 30mm chain gun in a remote weapon station. Augmented reality for the crew, hopefully better than the metaverse. As you say, that was cancelled. But I mean, they were going to. It was a concept tank. They were going to take ideas from it and then throw them, see what they can do with them. Now we've got the M1E3, which is the latest concept tank shown at the Detroit Motor Show in early 2026. Said to be a working testbed where the Army tries out all the improvements they'd like to get into the Abrams, but have previously been constrained by the weight, electrical power, space, and the needing to be compatible with 1980s technology. There are some great ideas there, but it will be a while before any of them come rolling off the factory floor.
All right, Rob, the operators.
The operators.
Yeah.
Australia. obviously, because it's an Australian tank. Having not been invited to play tanks during Gulf War One because we were still using Leopards, and not even Leopard 2s, Australia made the decision we had to leave the 1960s and buy some newer tanks in 2004. But as always, the issue was cost. The Army got the go-ahead based on this note. All right. Quote, all Western countries that operate tanks have been faced with the dual challenges of an increased threat in a more robust operating environment and the need to upgrade their fleets to accommodate the demands of a more costly and digital battlefield. In other words, everyone else is doing it and having to pay for it, so suck it up and get the best protected version of you can, because the cost of a tank is nothing if cheap ones start blowing up and the body bags start coming home and the public sentiment turns against you.
Which comes back to Laserpig's crap tank fallacy, which is, the idea that if you have a cheaper tank, yay, it's cheaper, but it costs a hell of a lot to train crews, and maybe you want to keep them alive, and it's worth investing in what keeps those crews alive so that they can learn lessons in combat and be more effective in future conflicts.
And means that if you do send your army off to an ill-advised war in the Middle East, then you get fewer body bags coming home, which turns the public opinion against you, well, like Afghanistan for Russia, Soviets and so forth. It's a case of,
But publics can be quite tolerant of body bags, but your combat effectiveness declines as you lose train crews, and they can take a very long time to train. So if you've only got 100 tanks, they better be good ones, I guess, is what I'm really saying. But yeah.
Or 75.
Depends what country we're talking about.
What other country is there? Anyway.
So Tom keeps asking, could we talk about the M60-2000 120S, which was the M60 with the M1 turrets? I can't because I don't know anything about that one, I'm afraid. Sorry.
Right, there we go. So, in 2007, the first of 59 M1A1s were delivered to Australia. Whilst the US had approved Australia to buy more, the offer wasn't taken up. These tanks never saw combat as Australian vehicles, but of those 49 have been recently delivered to Ukraine for their use. In 2022, Australia put in an order for 75 M1A2 SEP V3s, which have been delivered without any depleted uranium. Supposedly, beside the depleted uranium, it's the same version as the US version, and not the usual SEP V3 that is sold on the export market, but with air conditioning.
So ours have aircon.
Yes, because supposedly the American ones, some of the American ones do now as well, but
only,
ours,
as the chieftain bitterly says, only to cool the computers, not for the crews.
I think the original 59 Australian ones had aircon, whereas the M1A ones, no other M1A ones had aircon, whereas only Australians. Now, Egypt. Here's something I had no idea about. Egypt has built 1,200 M1A1s Abrams since 1988. Their factory is outside Cairo, and I had no idea that anybody else...
Well, the assembly plant, but yeah.
The point being is I had no idea that anybody else was building Abrams besides the US, and suddenly I'm reading, hang on, what? Where'd that come from? So,
all right, folks, we've hit the important moment. The beer tube is empty.
Good on us.
Beer tube Winchester.
Their factory outside Cairo carried out the assembly of the components, but they were not allowed to manufacture the armour engine or fire control systems. However, the cost of to assemble the tanks was more than the cost to just buy them at the time. But the Egyptian government said they were willing to pay the extra cost to have the industry and domestic tank production.
Jobs for people instead of for Lockheed Martin shareholders, and actually building capacity. Yes, they still needed to get other components, but they are creating an infrastructure with which they can value add as time goes on.
These are ideas the Australian government would think are just crazy.
Well, anything that involves giving unionised workers jobs is something this country hates. But we'll talk about that more in the second half.
In the last year, in 2025, Egypt has been given permission to upgrade 555 of their M1A1s to M1A1 SA or situational awareness variants. So they'll be doing that. They've got a lot of tanks. US.
Yay!
All right. Besides the Egyptian Abrams, the other 9,000 hulls started out with the US until 2007, when Australia got their 59 tanks. So they weren't actually selling them to anybody else before us besides the Egyptians.
Huh.
Yeah, I know.
Besides the Egyptian.
Yeah, I know. Well, supposedly the Egyptians haven't sold theirs off.
So the point is that the US Army finally decided to try and get into the export game. Has been nowhere near as successful as the Germans with the Leopard 2. Partly because the Germans are much more accommodating of foreign buyers, whereas with the US, it's you get what they've made. But
yeah, I think the US were just saying, look, we've got to maintain this technological advantage. We don't want anybody else besides the Egyptians having it. I don't know, I understand about that bit. Anyway, between the Army Reserve and the National Guard, there are 4,500 or 5,000 Abrams in active service still. Of those 2,000-ish not sold off as foreign military sales are then parked in the desert to be pulled out and refurbed as required.
A bit like the Soviet pits for their tanks, but yeah.
Yep. A little side tangent about the logistics of to support tanks. Mainland USA is about the same size as Australia, and Australia will move around maybe 14 tanks at a time. And we're moving them, say, 2,500 to 3,000 kilometres on railways. When the US moves tanks and all the armoured vehicles that go with them, they use 600 rail cars for a single armoured brigade combat team, and they have 11 ABCTs. Whilst they don't own all of their rail cars, they need the US The US military does own a lot of rail cars, but they don't disclose how many that is. They see it as, I'm assuming they see it as a strategic asset. So playing trains in the US military is not a small job. I just thought I'd throw that in there because why not? People like trains. Iraq got invaded twice by them, but mainly they received their first 140 M1A1s.
Oh, they're now a big user of M1s. It's hilarious. And we've got some lovely photos on the slideshow of Iraqi M1s. Yeah,
on parade. Yeah. They received their first 140.
I think Islamic State briefly operated a couple that they'd captured, but
received their first 140 M1A1s in 2011, just as the US was bringing home most of their forces. But after nearly 100 were destroyed, lost, or handed over, or were captured from 2014 to 2016 against ISIS, they have since received another 400 M1A1s since then, and now have 450 Abrams.
Which is a big fleet of Abrams.
Yep.
Bigger than ours.
Yep. Now, Kuwait, they purchased 218 M1A2s and then recently replaced them with...
So Hans has just given us $30. Thank you very much, Hans. We truly appreciate it.
Right. Kuwait purchased 218 M1A2s and recently replaced them with M1A2Ks. They were originally just going to upgrade their existing tanks, but instead decided to buy new ones. Instead, as they did not want to have an interruption in their operational readiness. So they thought, let's make sure we don't have a gap in our tank coverage, because we're surrounded by a lot of people who have more tanks than us and are really belligerent, and we're on the path between them and us, or them and the other person. And we're looking at Saudis and Iran, Iraq, and everybody else, and so Kuwait's just stuck there in the middle. So rather than upgrading their M1A2s,
and to be fair,
they just bought new ones.
The Kuwaiti chieftains, and we've always been very disparaging of chieftains to the upset of our British cousins. They did actually in when Iraq was invading Kuwait, the chieftains were pretty much the only thing that offered any resistance. The Battle of the Bridges being the famous example. So for the Kuwaitis, it's like obviously chieftain is well in the rearview mirror. Having a decent force of tanks to protect their oil from their very hostile neighbours makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. All right, Morocco, they purchased 222 M1A1 SAs in 2016, of which 162 have been upgraded to M1A2 SEP V3s. Now, I'm assuming Morocco's worried about
I don't know what Morocco's worried about, but
there's internal bickering with Mauritius or whatever it is. Not Mauritius, who's to the south of them. Western Sahara, that's what area.
Morocco. They're probably more worried about winning a civil war than they are about anyone else attacking them, because for most of the rest of the world, Morocco is a bunch of desert and a couple of fun cities to visit. But And the Spanish Foreign Legion still has some redoubts there, but I once shared a room in a hostel with a deserter from the Spanish Foreign Legion, and he was an absolute dick. I was really glad when I didn't have to spend any time with him. Yeah.
Poland picked up 116 of the retiring US Marine M1A1s in 2023 and now have bought another 250 M1A2 SEP V3s to go along with their Leopard 2s and their K2s. And they got a big, like Turkey, they got a huge fleet of lots of different tanks.
Yeah. I mean, the Turks have one of the great tank armies in the world. The Turks and the Poles at the moment have. It's amazing.
And the Greeks. I guess the Greeks have got to face off.
If the Turks are doing it, the Greeks have to go with them.
Yeah, all right. Kingdom of Saud has over 500 M1A2s, but have lost over 20 during their conflict in Yemen with the Houthi forces. They got their first 350 in 2013, another 150 in 2016, including backfilling the 20 lost ones. South Korea actually operates the K1 Baby Abrams, so it's not actually an Abrams at all. It's a Korean tank inspired by the Abrams with a lower profile and a V8 version of the Leopard 2 V12 diesel engine.
That sounds like an underpowered tank engine, but anyway, yeah.
Well, it's smaller and lower, so we're not really talking about that. We may do that as its own separate tank at some stage because.
Oh, right, okay,
yeah, so I'm not saying it's an Abrams. It's a K1.
I just want to say I can see in the teleprompter coming up. So I was confused about Taiwan because I didn't think they'd taken delivery. They only took delivery in January this year. Okay, yes. All right, let's progress, please, Rob.
Taiwan, the Republic of Taipei, or however they want to do it, or has taken final delivery of their 108 M1A2Ts in January 2026 to replace 2 battalions of their M60s. Surprisingly enough, China is not happy about it, but someone has to protect the chip factory because that's the main thing of Taiwan these days, isn't it?
Well, either that or America feels the need to destroy all the chip factories if China might take it, which the Taiwanese are pretty concerned about that American position. But anyway, we'll talk about that more in the second half of the show.
Right. Ukraine. After dithering and waiting to see if Ukraine could win by itself, the US eventually got around to providing Ukraine with 31 M1A1s in 2023. Of their 2,000 they've got sitting in the desert doing nothing, and or the Marine ones that they've just retired or anything else like that. Unfortunately, they were found to be as susceptible to minefields and artillery as the Soviet tanks they wanted to shoot in the last big Ukrainian armoured push. Since then, Ukraine has lost most of their American-provided Abrams, with Russia capturing a number of them intact. Having finally gotten permission from the US, Australia delivered 49 Abrams to Ukraine at the end of 2025.
It took us 18 months to actually get them there after we were like...
getting the permissions was a long time.
Well, yeah, but as we know, when the US bureaucracy runs slow, that's not an accident. It can run very fast when it wants to.
Oh, yeah. But anyway, got them there at the end of 2025, where they are being fitted with cope cages as we speak. Bahrain is in the process of buying 50 M1A2 SEP V3s, and Romania is in the process of buying 54 M1A2 SEP V3s to be delivered by 2028, and exploring the option of buying a further 216. So Romania really is it's a NATO outpost that America likes selling to because they're right on the borders with Russia or nearby Russia, whereby they can just do a lot of stuff and base a lot of things in. So
yeah, I mean, when you're in the 50 tank fleet, it's a training placeholder force, and you're maintaining a capability for,
they got
building up in the future.
They got all sorts of stuff in Romania. All right. And as John was saying, various Islamic militia groups and Houthi forces in Iraq and Yemen have captured Abrams tanks, but most of them have chosen to destroy them, as the logistics of trying to keep them is too much, and they want to prevent them from being recaptured by government forces.
If you're a Houthi, how are you getting the jet fuel and the ammunition? I mean, it's a T-55 you can manufacture in a shed in northern Syria, the ammunition, but this is not the tank for an insurgent force. And in fact, the problem with this tank for other countries is that without the whole American industrial logistics train behind it's not actually that great for anyone who's not an American.
And the other thing is, if you've tracked it and the crew flees and you've captured it, what are you going to recover it with? You got nothing that's going to move bloody
75-ton tank.
No. So most of the time they just take a few photos and say, look at us, we captured this thing, and then they blow it up. But actually, there was actually one instance where one Islamic militia who captured an Abrams took it into Mosul against Iraqi army forces.
Yeah, so they have used it as long as as long as the jet fuel lasted and the ammunition stayed in it.
They actually transported it up there on the back of a truck, on the back of a low loader, and then they took it off and took it up against the Iraqi forces.
Yeah. And I'm sure it made an impact. It would have been a hell of a problem for forces that weren't planning to be fighting that.
As I said, the situation in Iraq during that period of time, I mean, some of the troops were just handing over their Abrams because they
didn't want to die.
Well, they were Shiites, and they're saying, we don't want to fight for these bloody Sunnis in Baghdad who've been ordering us around for the last 20 years.
Yeah, but they wouldn't have been, Shiites wouldn't have been surrendering their tanks to IS because Islamic State is
Sunni, is it?
Incredibly Sunni.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'll make this point later on about...
It's hard to keep track.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'll make that point later on, yeah. All right. And everyone who bought the Abrams is still using them. The only former operators are the US Marine Corps, who I'm guessing are not that happy that they now have to rely on the Army to provide armour support. Their 450 Abrams were transferred to the Army in 2021. They wouldn't be happy about that. Anyway. Now we get on to the conflicts.
Hey, here we go.
A Cold War tank designed to defeat the T-72 of the Warsaw Pact motor rifle divisions. Luckily for everyone, it was never needed in this role. The Abrams' big debut came in Operation Desert Storm during Gulf War I in February 1991, when 1,800 Abrams crossed the line into Kuwait and Iraq. The level of lethality and protection on display to the world in the most televised conflict at the time was staggering. Facing off against 4,000 to 5,000 Iraqi tanks, no Abrams were lost to enemy fire. We won't mention blue-on-blue fire. Any Abrams that were disabled and could not be recovered were destroyed by their own troops.
I mean, there was this whole thing where the US Air Force and the US Army fought their own war against each other in that conflict because the Air Force kept hitting the Army and the Army kept shooting down the Air Force.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, which is one of the reasons why they have the identification panels on the side, so they can say, even at night, say... That's one of ours because it's got a panel saying it's a blue tank. Yeah. The 120mm Cannon M1A1s were rolled out just in time for Desert Storm. Whilst M1s were sent over to Saudi Arabia, most of them had their guns replaced with the 120mm M256 prior to Desert Storm kicking off because there was a 6-month period of... what was it?
It took a long time to move the heavy armour into theatre.
Yeah. But I mean, it was... Yeah. What was the... not Desert Storm. What was the one before that? Whatever.
It's hard to keep track of them. Gulf War I, Gulf War II is what I tend to go with.
I know, but there was an operation before. It was Desert whatever.
Anyway, Desert Shield.
Desert Shield, there you go. During that period of getting the stuff over there of Desert Shield, they swapped out the 105s for 120s for most of the tanks. Units in Germany equipped with M1A1s had theirs sent to the Kingdom of Saud and were backfilled with 105mm gunned M1s from the US. Somalia. I'm going to assume that most of our listeners and viewers have watched or read Black Hawk Down. At the start, it talks about the heavy Marine and Army presence, which after 6 months are replaced by UN forces. So those initial US forces brought in their Abrams with them to settle a land riven by strife. And then those peace enforcement troops leave and the UN peacekeepers take over. The US did have Abrams in Somalia during the Battle of Mogadishu on the 3rd of August 93, but had chosen not to take them as part of the Ranger Task Force mission. And the Pakistani M48 Pattons were much closer to provide support. After the battle, the US airlifted in more Abrams for the first time. This is the first time they've been flown in anyway. Brought them more in, and then all US forces were removed from Somalia by March '94. Iraq War.
I love that reaction though. It's like, okay, we're going to put the heavy armor in, and it's like, no, we don't want to be here at all. Withdraw the whole lot.
And that's where Bill Clinton just said, you know what, the world can sort itself out. I'm just going to divest America.
Which is actually what the rest of the world. If the US could just leave us all alone. As Smedley Butler said, they'll sort their own stuff out. Anyway, Rob,
and including
you got another beer for me?
Yes, including not selling either side of a conflict weapons because you want to do anything to it. The Iraq War, 2003. Look, I couldn't find definite numbers on how many Abrams were involved in the invasion of Iraq in March 2003, as they were keeping things much closer to the chest than they had in 1991. But somewhere around 1,700 Abrams tanks were used by the US in the 6 weeks of the war. And again, during the occupation, I couldn't find any definite numbers, but from what I could gather, over the next 8 years, the US had about 1,100 Abrams deployed throughout the country until they left in 2011. So it was surprising how, I mean, there was obviously more things written out there that I didn't find in my 5 minutes of Googling, but it's not as much as I would have thought. Afghanistan. Now, surprisingly enough, the US didn't actually take Abrams into Afghanistan until when they went. Sorry, they didn't take them in anything in 2001 when they went in and just basically overthrew the country with CIA forces and MI6 and various bloody special operations
and the
groups.
Northern Alliance under was it Massoud?
He died the day of 9/11.
They assassinated him on that day, but it was his alliance. But it's high and hot conditions, which turbines hate. So that might have coloured their thoughts on it. So it was one of the reasons Bagram had to have this incredibly long
airstrip
runway because the planes had to rumble along the thing for so long to be able to get in the air.
They didn't have enough air pressure underneath them. Anyway, so they didn't actually take any Abrams in to begin with, but the US Marines did deploy 17 Abrams to Helmand Province in Afghanistan in 2010, 9 years after they first invaded. The notes I read said it was because of the success of the Canadian and Dutch Leopards that the Abrams were then deployed, as the terrain and environment was not as much of a factor as for the tanks as only using them for specific types of missions. So basically, if you're using them for protection and basically being a deterrent, that's fine. If you're actually using them as an invasion and basically rolling them in through various streets trying to blow things up, then they become a much more of a target. All right. ISIS and the fallout of the Syrian civil war. All right. When climate change provoked the Syrian civil war in 2014, the Iraqi army and their newly provided Abrams were not ready for the situation. And to be fair, no one was. Heavily armed militias riding Mad Max style throughout Syria and Iraq, capturing towns and tanks, cooking up Abrams tanks made for great propaganda. As more US forces were deployed and more tanks provided to the Iraq, the situation was mostly brought under control.
It's worth remembering in that period a lot, and a lot, when I say a lot, I mean like 90% of the photos and videos you saw of destroyed Abrams were actually the ammo cook-off system working, and the tank wasn't actually destroyed. But it's very spectacular when the ammo goes off through the blowout panels.
Fireworks during the daytime. Yep. Meanwhile, the Kurdish forces in the north were doing their own thing against ISIS. Iraqi forces tried to bring the Kurds into line as well, and YPK troops took out another...
YPK, YPJ, there's a bunch of different forces.
Took out another Abrams when the Iraqi government forces tried to say, hang on a second, you lot aren't under our control and we see you as terrorists as well. So, but yeah, anyway, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, smarter people than me have tried to figure out what happened in that area of the world at that time. And none of them know, so I'm not even going to pretend that I know. So, as I said, it was a mess.
Bad people did bad things. Okay.
And other people had to try and get through it.
Yep.
All right, the Yemeni civil war. In 2014, Houthi Shiite rebels, supported by Iran, based in the north of the country.
Boo Iran.
Overthrew the Yemeni government. The Houthis won, but in 2015, a Saudi-led coalition of Arab states, Gulf monarchies and Blackwater mercenaries tried to overturn that decision with tanks. Over the next 5 years, a lot of civilians died and the Saudis lost and pulled out their ground forces. The Houthis continued to bomb the Saudis, and the Saudis used US intel and weapons to assassinate Houthi leaders, but you don't hear much about that in the media. During the 2015 ground war, 20 Abrams were lost of the 350 available to the Saudis. This was a time of bad press for the Abrams, as they were getting blown up in Iraq and Yemen at the same time, and kind of knocking them down a peg or two from the myth of the imperviousness that was Gulf War I.
I mean, it's just an unfair criticism that, if you are using tanks in a counterinsurgency role, they're going to run over things that blow up tracks, and as we've moved into the really modern era, there's zillions of drones coming in weird ways. The fact that a tank is still the best way to protect, what is essentially a node of command on the modern battlefield.
And direct fire support is what you really want.
Doesn't take away from the fact that they are still vulnerable when the enemy concentrates their attention on it. As we have said in this podcast numerous times, the first day in the Battle of the Somme in 1916 that the tanks rumbled onto the battlefield, they were still vulnerable to the enemy. They have never been impervious. They simply represent an enormous challenge for the enemy.
All right. After the Yemeni civil war, leads us into Ukraine, where even though we'd seen the vulnerability of the Abrams in the Middle East.
Sorry, Rob's struggling with his beer. But,
no, I'm not struggling. I know exactly where it is. I'm wrestling with my beer. We'd seen the vulnerability of the Abrams in the Middle East to unconventional forces. Surely in a straight-up tank battle against the actual Ruskies it was built to fight, it would win. And you can throw some casual racism in there as well to boot. Unfortunately, the Ukrainian army is not the US military and does not have all the support the US has to shape the battlefield and control the skies. And much to everyone's disappointment, the Abrams got blown up.
And all tanks are vulnerable. It's just the challenge they represent to the enemy to target the vulnerabilities. And when we talk about the future of the tank, leaving the top armor weak is no longer an option because weapons are getting much better at getting into that stuff.
So your Tusk, where your tank urban support, what do we call it?
Survival kit.
Survival kit, basically, which had armor for the roof because, a person standing on a rooftop with an RPG-7 firing into the top of the hull of your Abrams would still do it bad things to it. Yeah, you no longer... Basically, you want to armour the top of your hull nowadays, and that's true for drones as well.
But we also have, the NLAW weapon, which is a Norwegian, I think, weapon. Anyway, it fires its shape charge down, so it flies over the top of the tank and then fires the shape charge at 90 degrees to its angle of flight to hit that weak top armor. Javelin does a straight pop-up, so the missile goes up in the air and comes down on the weak armor. So the days of tanks being able to neglect the top armor or the 360 or 180 degrees of threat are gone. The old days when we're talking, getting to 1970s design, where you can just put all the armor on the front of the tank because that's where the threat's coming from. That's gone. Yep. So new designs are incredibly important and required for survival on the battlefield. But you still fundamentally you want to have effects on the battlefield. You want to have things that you are moving into the contested space. And it is going to end up looking like a tank, but it will be a different tank and a better tank for now.
And that's as long as you ignore the mole mortars that will be coming in the next 10 years, where their rounds come up from underneath.
Underneath the mole mortars, yes. Thank you for inventing that, Rob. That's
that's a 40k one. That's a squat weapon from 1980s 40k.
That's a whole other world of nightmares for the average infantryman. But the human infantryman will be obsolete before the tank. Is the point I'm trying to make.
Right. And rather than variants, let's go over the support vehicles for the Abrams.
Okay, here we go. The support vehicles.
All right. Surprisingly, the Abrams did not actually get its own recovery vehicle, as the US instead stuck with the M60-based M88 from 1961 and its upgrades. However, with the increase in weight of the Abrams to over 70 tonnes, the M88A2 is struggling to do the job, and sometimes two ARVs are usually deployed to carry out the tasks of recovering the vehicle when it breaks down, especially if it's in mud, up a hill, anything else like that. So, of the M88s sent to Ukraine, a number have been destroyed or abandoned, and one captured trying to get the disabled Abrams off the battlefield. Then we have the M1150 Assault Breacher Vehicles, ABV. Whilst the Rekimex didn't get a new tank, the engineers did with the ABV.
Which is one of the most important, and I'm sorry I didn't actually get one into the slideshow either, but in terms of launching an armoured assault in modern warfare, it's the most important vehicle around because it can actually clear a minefield.
It's got mine plows and mine lane clearance rockets and all sorts of fun stuff for the combat engineers to play with.
And it looks like a spider because it's got all these little skids out in front of it that are putting specifically weighted inputs into any mines that are around. So the idea is that the skid goes over on an 80 kilo, and that takes out the human anti-personnel thing, and then it will simulate the ground pressure of a tank, but out there in front. It's the funny thing is the ground pressure of a tank is actually lower than a fully loaded infantryman. But yeah.
But the thing with these things is that even Australia's bought 29 of them. All right. And we've even got 17 bridge layers of the 2019 design M174 Joint Assault Bridge. The US Army found that if you keep bumping up the weight of the Abrams, then your old M60 bridge layers can no longer do the job, and they only built 43 of the M104 Wolverine Abrams-based bridge layers by 2003, which is not nearly enough. So the M1074 was brought into service. You were going to say something?
No, I'm okay.
All right. Anyway, I'm guessing Australia got so many ABVs and bridge layers, 54 engineering vehicles, including our 7 M88s to support 75 tanks, because we spread all our Abrams out all over the country into combat teams rather than into a single regiment. So,
this is the point, Sarah, I was going to make, is that I don't know who was the genius in Australian defence procurement, who are normally not very good, actually said, you know what, we need more of the support vehicles than we do of the actual combat vehicles, because particularly we don't have the bridges in this country to support this tank, so we're going to have to bring the bridges with us, and lots of those breaching vehicles, because if we are launching an attack, we have to clear the minefields. So someone in the Australian Army actually did a really good job with this procurement, in my view.
There you go.
And that doesn't happen very often. Well, so well done to whoever you were.
All right. But I will throw in one concept tank that I love the premise of, the ALVT, the Abrams Lightweight Variant Tank.
Oh, a lightweight Abrams, Rob.
A concept tank from the 90s for a light Abrams made of titanium.
Which would have to come from Russia.
Yes, a titanium tank. If the Soviets could have a titanium submarines, why couldn't the US have a titanium tank? The idea was to get the weight down to 44 tons. Unfortunately, did not get off the drawing board, surprisingly enough. And I feel that the M10 Booker was ready to take its place. But the situation became, what's the point of flying in one Booker when you could fly in one Abrams instead, which would have been true for the ALVT also. But I just love the idea of them.
Now,
titanium.
Our tall American friend has been quite vociferous that the limitations on the C-17 that reduced it to only taking one Booker could have been overcome, and they could have got 2 in. Yes.
I couldn't tell. I mean, between the C5 and the C-17, which one carries more? Galaxy or Globemaster?
No, the C5 has a bigger load, but I mean, it's a much older design.
Yeah.
It's essentially obsolete.
Yeah, it's a 1960s or 70s design, yeah.
And I did have a moment when I ran a little media company where the first Australian C-17 was doing a flyover of Canberra, and
Charlie the C-17, I had a plushie of him.
Well, but the thing was that I was standing on this bridge for this flyover, and I was like, this pilot looks like they are deliberately putting on a show for me. And then it turned out that the pilot of the plane was actually a fan of the website and was deliberetely putting on a show for me where I was standing. And then they got in quite a lot of trouble for that. And I apologise for getting them in trouble, but it was beautiful.
There you go. All right. Finally, we get on to the legacy of the Abrams. Look, it's not a tank for small or poor armies. Looking at you, Australia. The logistical footprint of this beast of a tank, and don't get me wrong, it's a great tank. The logistical footprint should never be underestimated. whether it's the roads and bridges that can handle it, the ability to keep it fed with enough fuel, the complexity of the systems and the engines that can only be repaired in a national workshop. Yes, you can change out the gas turbine engine in a very short period of time.
If you have a spare.
With the right support and with a spare, which is great, but that engine needs to be shipped off to be repaired, whereas a heavy diesel engine is a heavy diesel engine, and you can get repaired anywhere that has the parts. Even the support vehicles to tow it and carry it when it breaks are special, as not everything can deal with the weight of the Abrams. And if you don't have a Petronation's supply of fuel and cash, keeping the hungry beast that is the gas turbine fed, it very quickly becomes a prize that you keep in the driveway for others to look at and admire. I'll say it is in the top 5 tanks in the world, and the redesigns and changes the US Army are looking to implement are sensible improvements that don't mess with the winning formula that is the Abrams. Go completely digital, drop the weight, simplify the engine, make it a hybrid, put it in an autoloader, maintain the high levels of protection, maneuverability and lethality, and then figure out how to deal with drones. Until then, the nearly 50-year-old workhorse will have to keep on going.
I feel like you're describing what should be the M2 with a different general's name on it. But,
no, it's going to be Trump's name on it. So the M2 Trump.
Oh, I don't think he's going to be president long enough for that to
It'll be the M2 Trump, baby. What do you mean? He's going to be there. He's going to be there. Third term. Anyway, refer to poll. How are we doing in the poll, John?
The poll. Was the greatest is sitting at 59% and is the greatest is at 41%, which I feel is a very fair sort of split. And
come on, boys and girls.
That's 17 votes, and we've got 18 concurrent viewers right now. So someone hasn't voted yet.
Could it be us? Have we not voted yet?
Yeah, I don't know. We've just had another. At least another vote's gone in. All right, Rob. I believe is that the end of the first half.
That is the end of our first half. So
at 1 hour and 15 minutes. So thank you, the enormous number of people we got watching. We love you guys. Now, we've got a quick interview. It's only about 10 minutes with Hugh, who is representing us at the Northern Hemisphere Tank Festivals this year. And then we will be back, and we have the biggest second half we've ever done. We've got 18 items to get through.
Including tactical cat ears.
Tactical cat ears are coming up. Yes.
So be on the lookout for them. You'll enjoy them.
All right. So, folks, we will be... Mehdi has just said, great podcast, very fair representation of the M1. Thank you. Raghav's asking Hugh who, and you're about to learn.
You'll learn.
Here comes Hugh. All right, here we go, folks. Okay, so we are joined by my old friend and colleague, Hugh Cullymore, who is heading off to the Northern Hemisphere Tank Festivals on behalf of Totally Tank. So we thought we'd better introduce you, Hugh, to the audience. How are you, mate?
Well, good. Thanks for having me.
Now, just for folks who, you were in an episode before where we talked about the Murrayville Tank Graveyard, but for folks who might have missed that, you and I, we've worked together in a brewery. We've worked together in a war museum that owned many tanks. So we're highly adjacent on this stuff. And you do also do some work with my partner Sheridan as well. So it's and
it's a weird overlap.
Shared a house. So okay. And when Hugh left the house, one of the dogs went into a fit of rage at being abandoned, and still won't talk to him when he comes to visit. But okay, there's that's the background. So Hugh, tell us where you're getting to this Northern Hemisphere tank season.
Well, look, we're starting off with Tank Fest. That's a must. I've never been to Tank Fest before. I've been to Bovington before, but I've never seen any of the tanks actually working. So that's going to be great. So we'll be there for the weekend. Hoping to make it to Miller Tracks.
Excellent.
And then, honestly, a few of the big swap meets floating around. We'll see how we go. None of those booked in just yet, but open to suggestions. If any viewers out there have any suggestions, let me know.
Okay, so we can definitely say Miller Tracks and Bovington Tank Fest.
Absolutely,
so that's good for folks wanting to get in touch with you. And what's the best way for people to get in contact if they want to grab a beer with you?
Well, why don't we say message you guys on Facebook or something like that?
Okay, sure. So get in touch with Totally Tanked, and we'll pass it on. Okay. Just in
If you,
terms of real time, everyone will need to work plan in advance. That's cool. So what are you? And you're going to be wearing a Totally Tanked baseball cap. We've decided, so people should keep an eye out for that.
Yeah. Yep. So maybe what we could do is maybe morning of each event, I could take a selfie, say whereabouts I'm going to be, what I'm going to see, and play maybe like
the time
if I'm
frames will be
staying nearby.
exciting for us, but we'll try and get it up.
Yeah.
We'll do our
Okay.
best, but yeah, we can bug it onto let's say Facebook for sure, and we'll go from there. That's excellent. So Hugh, what are you looking forward to seeing at these events?
I mean, all sorts of tanks are actually running. I mean, the time that we were working at the War Memorial there, we, saw some really cool tanks. Like it was really cool getting to, dust off Mephisto and, go inside some of the tanks but seeing them run, that's a whole different beast. It's a whole different kettle of fish. I think the last time I actually saw a tank running was I saw the Fury tank at Bovington was running the day that I was there. But it's not so often you see that, and just sort of meeting some of the enthusiasts. It's
Good people
it's
around.
rare that
Yeah.
you'll meet a group of enthusiasts that you don't learn something new. And there's just a testament to what you guys do. There's always something new to learn about tanks.
Fair enough. So you do have a bit of a background in military history. Do you just want to walk people through your qualifications?
Yeah. So I was an assistant curator at the Australian War Memorial for 3 years. So I worked in well, most of the time I was in their art department, but I was a sort of go-to technology guy and sort of the go-to guy for anything Vietnam and earlier. So if there was like a tank in a painting, I'd get a tap on the shoulder and go, be asked, what's that? So yeah, I was there for 3 years. I grew up building like model airplanes with various family members, and yeah, you know, uh, airplanes are really my first military love. But over the years, you guys have twisted my arm a little bit. Tanks have become more interesting, and yeah, look wherever there's a war museum, I usually stop in. I really like the one in Ottawa. That's a really good one. I was there not so long ago. They've got some incredible stuff there. And
Will you be making
yeah.
it back across to North America and Canada this year, or just sticking with Europe?
Yeah, well I was actually just over in Las Vegas and LA, and I'll probably be back there for some more research. So I'm doing a PhD as well, PhD in art history, which is sort of where me and John's partner overlap. But yeah, so I'm in America quite a bit, and so I'll probably try and check out somewhere like Battlefield Las Vegas. They have a few tanks there. Um, but yeah, I think the next time I'll be over there will be probably July. So if there's any events in July that you guys know of or any of
Yeah,
your
there are
viewers
plenty.
know of,
Yeah, I got to say, we'll need to pull out some of the events that mentioned in Turret Monsters podcast. Lottie and co go through each events that are coming up in the coming months at various museums and places around the world. So they've definitely got a listing of things. I haven't listened to it in the last 2 weeks, so got to catch up on that one. But they're definitely a source of information. And
So that's our regular plug for Turret Monsters.
Yep.
You know?
And Sophie Lyons put out the North American map of tank museums. So it's just an interactive map. You can just click on the saying, I'm going near Detroit this weekend. I wonder if there's any tank museums around there. And it shows the map of all the tank museums in this specific area of the US. So and she's trying to expand that. So again, another online resource. You can just jump on and say, hey, there's something happening in Ottawa or wherever else. The American Armor and Cav Museum down in Georgia. I think it is. I can't remember all the names. So, yeah.
yeah, another thing that's on my sort of horizon is tanks in town. But we're just trying. I was just trying to look up accommodation the other day. It's proven to be a little bit difficult, but tanks in town's also on the horizon.
Which one's that?
Whereabouts is that?
So that's in Mons, in Belgium.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Hmm. Nice
You can
one.
just
Well, if any of our
wander
listeners
down
in
the road.
Belgium want to offer you accommodation, but if anyone around Tank Festivals wants to offer you accommodation, we'll see what works out. So
Yeah, wouldn't say no. I've got a little
I don't think we've
hotel
got too many
organized in Paul,
ex-murderers.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
And if you can get a selfie with Sophie Line, I'll buy you a beer. But,
We'll buy you a beer anyway.
Yeah.
So, Hugh, can you just let people know in terms of your tank nerdery? Have you got a favorite tank at the moment?
Yeah, I don't know. I still like the really early stuff. Anything First World
I mean,
War.
they're weird. Yeah.
You know, I was named for the patron saint of Lincoln, which the sort of home
As
of
in,
the initial invention of the tank. I'm right in that, isn't it? That was where tanks were invented.
I don't know if you're wrong. I haven't kept track of where the first ones were developed, but
I'm pretty sure there's a roundabout sort of in the town that's got sort of what do you call it, an outline of a tank. I'm pretty sure that was sort of either a lot of early innovation was done, or whether it was actually where the first ones were invented. But
it is also
yeah,
home to one of the most beautiful cathedrals in the world. But yeah,
stunning. Yeah, and right by some really good airfields. Last time I was there, it was just before the coronation, the king's coronation. So I saw all the warbirds practicing before they did the flyover. Yeah. But look, anything First World War. Love to see anything First World War, especially if it runs, which is
it's pretty much just FT-17s these days, isn't it? You're not seeing too many other things from that era.
Well, the replica Mark IV will be running around Bovington.
Yeah.
Oh, they got that going out? That's exciting.
Yeah, they got that moving. I've seen videos of it moving. Whether or not it'll be moving this year, I don't know.
Excellent. Rob, you got any other questions?
Mainly that. Okay, you've gone over the First World War stuff. You like. I guess if you had to pick a Second World War or an oeuvre of tanks, what are you liking the ideas of the heavies and the lights, the mediums, your infantry tanks? Anything else appeal to them? Like, is it just the history and the design of them?
Yeah, look, Petzers always stand out, and like a lot of those German ones were just so, I don't know, over the top engineered that compare them to say the Russian equivalent, it's just night and day. So it's really, really interesting to see, just how advanced the Germans were, during the Second World War.
Yeah, I mean, Soviet welding was actually, in many ways, was technically more advanced, but generally done very poorly. So that's a whole other thing. But the fully electrified and automated submerged welding was actually a long way ahead of its time. It was just done by people drunk on vodka who weren't being paid. So yeah,
living out in the open, 1,000 miles away from their factory.
I'm also very keen to see a little Kettenkrad floating around. I'd love to have a go on one of those one day.
Millitrax normally has quite a few Kettengrads running around, I think. So, but yeah, they're amazing when you see them.
They're just so cool.
They're more like a universal carrier than a motorbike, but yeah.
Yeah. They're still fun.
Nice one. Okay, well, Hugh, thank you so much for traipsing around tank festivals for us this coming summer, northern summer. Obviously, we're going into winter here. That's why it's pitch black around here. But we really do appreciate it, and we're looking forward to. We'll definitely be putting up your photos and videos on totallytank.net, and then we'll be getting highlights packages into the main show as it becomes available. So we really appreciate you being our agent in the Northern Hemisphere, and what we can get out of it.
Look, travel safe, and looking forward to hearing of your experiences as you see the world and photograph tanks.
Yeah. Thanks. All right. We'll see you then.
So we are back, and that means, Rob, it is time for beer review.
I just want to say thank you to Hugh for talking to us, and look out for him if you're going to any of the Northern Hemisphere tank things, and say good day. And,
we have loaded them up with, a couple of $1,000s worth of camera and recording gear, so we're hoping we get something out of this, but it's second-hand gear. It's not. That's
not what we're
replacement
using,
value,
right?
but
Yeah.
Anywho, Rob, beer review. You have bought
an Australian beer that is American and associated with John. So
Yes.
it's called the Ben Spoke Dick Tracy. Mm-hmm. It's an American brown ale, and let's hear it.
Yeah.
There we go. There's the can rip for you. So it is brown, dark.
Now, so I spent 4 years of my life working for the Ben Spoke Brewery, and
the last Anzac Day we did the crankshaft, which is one of my favourites. So and this time we're doing another Ben Spoke.
So obviously I have a relationship, and there is a point in the nearish future we'll probably have the owner of the brewery, Richard Watkins,
Awesome.
as a halftime interview, because he owns a lot of tanks.
Really?
Well, yeah.
As in tanks.
Fermentation tanks. Yeah.
That could have been such a good April 1st, buddy.
That could have been the April 1st, man. Maybe that will be the April 1st. But
you'll never know.
Yeah. Anyway, so this is an American-style brown ale brewed here in Canberra.
Dick Tracy.
Yeah, and
I'm assuming because Richard
and his partner is Tracy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
And it was the first batch brewed in the brewery when they got started, and I was one of the original employees. Look, it's got a lot of piney notes in it from a very American style hopping regime, but it's also got a very heavy malt backbone because it's fundamentally not quite a stout, but very dark beer. And you know what? It's a lovely beer, and I have drunk many pints having a fantastic time with friends. And
6% Drifter Series. On nothing worthwhile comes easily. Drinking off the beaten track allows you to explore roads less travelled. The Drifter Series will broaden horizons, drift in and out, and will no doubt bend a few spokes along the way. I hate bloody replacing spokes. Anyway.
So Alan's asking, how does an American brown ale differ from a stout? Slightly lower malt backbone and slightly higher hopping profile would be how you'd describe an ABA versus a stout. But this is a very dark brown ale, which is fine. But it's hopped like a West Coast IPA. Would probably be how I'd try to land it, and Richard might have a totally different view, but we will get him on the show to talk about these things. Yes, as we said in the last segment, tanks and brewing have always had a lot of adjacency in this podcast, and here we go.
Yeah.
All right, Rob, is this the time to talk about the patrons?
Yes.
All right.
Our lovely Patreons.
The
artists here, they get their interview early and the ad-free video and audio of the show. And here they are.
So we have Brian Jenkins, Per, Cornelius Weber, Chris Pezet, Anton Gorbanov, Maxi Misk, Chicago John, Hans Vormhat, Johnny Oot, Monty, and Jacob Caban. And then in the apprentice tier, who also get the ad-free audio and video of the show, we have David Mulvaney, Scotch 12, Floaty Burb, Steve Matthews, Jamie Stokes, Guy Hook, Jay Beckman Strauss, Hans Wang, Henry Hermer, Dan Sepienza, Christoph Keller, Tony L, Elliot Spicer, Russell Phillips, Red Rum X1216, Callum, Steve Broomfield, James Van Dyke, The Rain Man, Joe M, Mark Dorner, and new Patreon subscriber Jade. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yes, in terms of patrons and the Apple bastardry, keep calm and carry on. But if you want to join, do use a web browser to join if you're so inclined. And then also do check out the new website, totallytanked.net. All right, we've done the beer review. Rob, talk to us about 2 Up.
No, and talk to us about Anzac Day.
Oh, okay.
2 Up. All right.
All right, I'm going to put the second half slideshow on there now.
Good choice.
Yeah.
Right. So for those of you watching live, we're recording today's episode on April 25th, 2026, which in Australia is known as Anzac Day, the day when the Australian New Zealand Army Corps landed on the beaches of the Gallipoli Peninsula in the Dardanelles in the Ottoman Empire. And we could go on and on about that campaign and how it shaped Australia over the next 111 years. But instead, we're going to go over the other aspect of Anzac Day in Australia, which is the game of 2 Up.
Oh, hang on, Rob. Quickly before I go into that, there was an enormous amount of booing of the Welcome to Country at Anzac Day ceremonies, dawn services today. And you people are...
Scum.
And we hope you die painfully.
Yeah,
and we'll talk about more people who want to die painfully in the next hour. But
even the beer says on it,
brewed on Ngunnawal country.
Yep, it's Ngunnawal country.
We are coming to you from Ngunnawal country. Sovereignty was never ceded. All right, let's keep rolling.
All right, 2 Up is gambling. There is no skill involved, only chance. And one where you cannot manipulate the odds in your polymarket, in the odds in your favour on polymarket by invading somebody you've just placed the bet on. Just to add to this jibe, the US Army soldier who bet that Maduro was going to be captured was part of the team to do it and is now being brought up on charges. Should he use the better VPN or for his crypto punt or cut Hegseth in on the payout?
I think you've got to cut the Trumps in on the payout. But anyway.
I mean, Don Jr. was already on the payout, all right? He's already getting his. I mean, but the point being is that, it's a game of chance. There is no stacking the odds in your favour. Now, back to 2 Up. It's a simple game that has to be done as part of a group. You stand around in a circle and place 2 coins on a flat stick. You then throw the coins up in the air and bet if they will come down. 2 heads or 2 tails, or down at all anyway. You cannot bet on them coming down as one of each. It's only legal to do in most of Australia on Anzac Day and was totally illegal until 1983, which just meant it was played illegally because it was just a form of gambling that could be done.
Look, it was one thing about when the Hawke Labor government came to power, one of the many enormous reforms to Australian politics they did was legalising 2 Up because Bob Hawke, the incoming Prime Minister, it should be remembered, also held a world record for sculling a yard glass.
Two world records, one for sculling a yard glass, one for sculling a 6-pack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway,
so here's to you, Hawke.
Hawke liked to drink, and then he tried to pretend that he didn't drink while he was Prime Minister, and then there was an interview with George Bush Senior. Where he was like, oh, we loved Bob Hawke. We drank so many beers together. It was awesome. And he was like, oh, Hawke told us he wasn't drinking back then. But yes. So I do want to say that, at this time of day that we're recording right now, pubs all across Australia, there will be hundreds of people throwing around outside the pub, watching the coins go up and down. And having been forced to run the 2 Up once in my brewery days, it's terrifying how much folding money is being staked around the coin toss, and I'm supposedly responsible for it, but everyone takes care of themselves, and it all works out in the end.
All right, so the way 2 Up works, the boxer or ring keeper runs the game standing in the middle and handing the flat stick called the kip to the person who is invited to throw the coins, who is called the spinner, which is where we get the phrase, come in spinner. The spinner that must throw the coins at least 3 metres up, and the coins must land within the designated ring. If they come up 2 heads, the spinner gets another go. If they come up 2 tails, the kip passes to the next person. If they come up one of each, called odds, the spinner gets another go, but will be expected to stand down if they keep throwing odds. There is no house, even though it's now run by clubs who will take their share.
Clubs and pubs, but yeah.
Clubs and pubs. And you bet with the other people in the circle. As with anything in life, there are more complexities and rules to it, and trying to play after a few beers makes it quite a quick way to lose money, which is what happened to me the few times I've given it a go. There are things with the spinner getting a pot of money each time they throw heads, with the goal to throw 3 heads in a row, and that the person who takes the bet that it will come up tails holds the money. I'm ashamed to say that that is the length of my knowledge of TUUP, and I'm sure there are some proper strines around that will let us know what I've missed. And now for something else. Because the other thing about Anzac Day is that we need to talk about Australia's fighting spirit. And a lot of that fighting spirit comes from this other thing that we have. It's called
Bundaberg rum.
It's called rum, all right? So we're going to... I found this bottle in the cupboard, and it had maybe half a shot each. So I thought, look, you know what?
I'm going to say...
This is Australia's fighting drink.
I'm going to tell a story. In the early 1990s, I found myself in Edinburgh for Hogmanay, and I brought a bottle of Bundaberg rum overproof, which is about 60% alcohol, as my contribution to the party. And immediately, because Scots being Scots, someone poured a pint of it and handed it to the host, and we all started singing, Get It Down, You Zulu Warrior. And he dutifully sculled that pint of overproof rum. And then, because we were particularly unpleasant people, someone called his mother and put him on the phone. And
I'll be calling the hospital because that's where he needs to go. All right. So
anyway, we had a fantastic Hogmanay, but
right,
anyway, so here's...
we're going to talk about the rum in Australian culture, right? Rum is the Australian fighting drink, right? This is what you give your troops. This is what they drink.
The assault on Bardia, we gave them a quart of rum before they captured... 6,000 Australians captured 25,000 Italians with a quart of rum in each of them.
When we rioted through Cairo, I'm sure there was plenty of rum going around there as well, which is why we got kicked out of the country for the next 20 years. I mean, and I found this bottle in the cupboard, and it probably hasn't been drunk for the last 30 years or something like that, because I found it in another cupboard before I brought it home.
Okay.
So anyway, here he is to the famous Bundaberg rum, to Anzac Day, to all those who have passed and all those who have served. Here we go.
All right.
I don't need to do it in a shot. I'm just going to drink it. So anyway.
I'm knocking it down. Here we go.
All right, we're going to knock it. All right, here we go.
I mean, it's not even OP, and oh Jesus! Whoa! Yeah, look, Bundaberg rum is not the best rum in the world. It's not even in the top 100 best rums in the world, but it is the most Australian rum in the world. And we did literally have a rebellion in this country. We
overthrew the governor, who'd already been, that was William Bligh, because he wasn't feeding the troops rum. So,
all right, okay. All right, let's try and get this show over.
So this is Anzac Day, right? This is what it's all about. Drinking beer, drinking rum, and picking fights.
Drinking Bundy rum and punching people.
And TUUP, right? Anzac Day, all right. All right.
Okay, I'll drive from here for a bit. All right, let's see how we go. So the Aussie Abrams, we've got reports now of their deployment in Ukraine, and they are turtle tanks now.
Yep.
They've got cope cages, they've got ERA. It's going everywhere.
The Ukrainians are making sure that the turrets can still turn with the cope cages on them, so they actually can use the ability to traverse the guns around the place, whereas a lot of the other cope cages that they've installed, or the turtle tanks,
limit the vehicle.
Limit to basically the 60 degrees to the front of the tank.
All right, moving on.
Some sad news.
Our Japanese bureau chief, which is my brother who lives in Japan, sent us the news, which hasn't been widely reported outside of Japan. There's been an accident on the firing range with a Japanese Type 10 tank, where three, which is basically the crew, died. Now, modern chemistry and electronic breech ignition should have made this impossible, which raises the question of whether the chemistry is wrong or the ignition's wrong. But as it appears to have taken place during a firing exercise, you do have to wonder if the breech failed with its lightweight tank design made out of super steel.
And look, it's not something we're going to know, and it's probably only going to be reported in Japanese, so we may not actually get across to us. But as John said, if it's the Japanese super steel that they've put in place to make it lightweight and reduce the weight of the tank, who knows what could have happened there? So we'll find out.
Yeah. Now, Rob, the Pope.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, now, Stalin said how many divisions has he got? Then he's been a bit of conflict with the current United States government. And the question is, how far to the right? How far to the right of Genghis Khan do you need to be?
Genghis Khan was that left-wing bastard.
Yeah, how do you need to be that the Holy Father of the Roman Catholic Church looks like a soy lefty to you? Like, I have got a lot of problems with the Catholic Church being too conservative myself. It still needs to do a lot of work on gender roles and LGBTIQA plus issues, not to mention child sex offences. And just because an institution opposed communism doesn't mean that they have to agree with a fascist agenda. So my point is simply that if you're getting in a fight with the Pope for being too lefty, you are a long way too right.
And just remember, boys and girls, the Pope is not just a person. He's the embodiment of the Catholic Church's channel to God, right?
Well,
it's
only when he's speaking ex cathedra, which isn't the case in these statements.
But my point being is that you can't be telling him morality of saying, you can't tell. I know Catholics better than you do, Mr. Pope.
Well, you've had Sean Hannity saying, well, I'm no longer a Catholic because he's being mean to my side. And it's like, well, maybe you should listen to the spiritual leader you aspire to.
If that's what you're choosing.
Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway,
let's move on, because the Lebanon War has had some tank combat, Rob. So this is actually in our wheelhouse. At the time of writing, I've seen Hezbollah claim they have 188 Israeli tanks destroyed or damaged.
I can see damaged, but I can't see destroyed.
This is where we're going. Israel has admitted to losing 5. These numbers seem very far apart, and given the unremitting lies of the Israelis, some observers lean towards Hezbollah's tally.
I wouldn't, just because they've got an incentive to up the numbers.
But even if you're not trying to up the numbers, this is my point. On this, I've got a contrary view, which is firstly that damaged is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that number. It would appear to represent more times we fired heavy weapons at something we thought was a tank, which brings us to not everything you think is a tank at 5,000 metres is actually a tank. And sometimes a nasty looking rock can be claimed as a great number of tank kills, even by very professional armies. And then you've got destroyed tanks acting as missile magnets and being claimed numerous times. And throw into that, we fired at the tank, and when the smoke cleared, it was gone, which can just be that it withdrew, after a near miss, or that it withdrew after superficial damage. As tanks tend to disappear when the anti-tank missiles are sleeting into their positions. And what I'm saying here is that while 188 versus 5 sounds like a major discrepancy, it's not too far off what you'd expect in the confusion of war, particularly when you remember that it's not comparing apples to oranges, because Hezbollah's claiming damaged and the Israelis are reporting destroyed. Hezbollah appears to be fighting hard in good order in southern Lebanon, despite Israel's efforts to commit crimes against humanity there.
And international law of invading a sovereign nation.
And before people get their undies in a bunch about my words, the attempted forced depopulation of southern Lebanon by Israel is a crime against humanity under Section 7 of the Statute of Rome, and we will not be taking questions on that. All right, Rob, what's next?
Just quickly on the Iran war, is it under-remarked on that for the first time since the Second World War, the US has managed to find not one single ally willing to get involved. Usually Australia, or at least Micronesia, can get its arm twisted, but this one is such an illegal act of self-harm that they've only got Israel, who are less of an ally and more the reason the US got into this mess in the first place. So the US is just really looking to say, but you're all supposed to follow me. Look, I went in, and everybody else has to come in with me because I'm the boss, and that's not happening. And look, I think they're finding out that if you be mean to everybody all the time, they don't necessarily have to follow you.
But also, when you start an illegal war of choice, that is a totally different thing from any other defensive arrangement other people have got. So, just breaking news today, we've heard that the US is reviewing the status of the Falklands as punishment for the UK not supporting the madness of the God Emperor. which does mean that they are cooking up something awful for Australia too. Although that probably just means they'll make us go through with the AUKUS deal, which is the worst deal this country's ever entered into because it was done by Scott Morrison, the stupidest prime minister this country's ever had. I do love the symbology of stripping the anti-fascist United Kingdom of people and territory to prop up the fascist Argentine government under Javier Milei. All right, Rob, you got some more beer for us here.
Which one do you want?
I'll go the VB.
There you go. Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. While we're talking about beers and stuff, I also found, when I was finding the Bundaberg rum in the cupboard with only that 2 shots in it, I also found a little bottle of port from my graduation of ad for back in 1994. And it's still sealed. It's still there. And I was going, one day I will...
I'm not drinking a shot of port right now. I'll tell you that.
This one is fun because this one's it's a clay bottle, but this one is actually designed to be a refill of the crystal decanter that I bought at the time. So between high school ad for an RMC, which is I've got a lot of ports sitting in the cupboard, and I've been having it over the years, but I just thought I'd just pull this one out because it was in the cupboard.
It's got a wax seal on it. It's a porcelain thing, and it says Class of 1994, Royal Military Academy.
Australian.
It's ADFA, the Australian Defence Force Academy.
I mean, I'll bring an RMC one next time. So just for the 1995 thing, and then maybe one of our high school ones. But I thought, look, I'm just going to throw them in because I like port, but. Don't drink. Obviously, I haven't drink enough of it. Don't drink enough of it because I've still got this one from 1994. Anyway,
let's move on. Rob, Haaretz, which is an Israeli news outlet, has reported today that Benjamin Netanyahu has had prostate cancer. Yay!
Oh, noes.
Sadly, he's been treated successfully. And I don't normally wish cancer on anyone, but I saw that video of the children in the field hospital burning to death, and if there's any justice in the world, that's how he will spend eternity. While my dog Orwell runs around him having a great time, I guess. But this is Anzac Day, Rob.
Yes.
So we should note that Ben Roberts-Smith, who is often incorrectly described in Australian media as our most decorated soldier because Keith Payne is still alive, but the billionaires who love Ben Roberts-Smith only choose his Australian decorations. And when Keith Payne won all his medals in Vietnam, he was mostly imperial decorations.
Right.
So, and the War Memorial, who is the final arbiter of these things, simply describes Ben Roberts-Smith as the most decorated Australian soldier in the Afghanistan War. And I am going with that because I still think Keith Payne's got the best chest.
But it's no Zukov.
Yeah, well, no, he's no Zukov. But I'm going to throw this out here. I have been at a ceremony where I've seen Ben Roberts-Smith try and shake Keith Payne's hand, and Keith Payne is a very right-wing old army soldier. Refused to shake his hand. But anyway, let's move on from that. So Ben Roberts-Smith has finally been charged with 5 counts of war crimes murder. And a lot of people want to defend our soldiers no matter what they do. But for me, murdering a disabled prisoner and then stealing his prosthetic leg and using it as a beer glass on video is a bit much for me. And I would hope that most of our listeners would think that is a bit of a crime. Now,
but if they talk about it, they'll get sent to jail for being a whistleblower.
Well, yeah. But let's remember that 21 members of the Special Air Service Regiment have given evidence against Ben Roberts-Smith, and those brave soldiers deserve far more credit than this one war criminal who...
Look, not taking away the fact that he did a lot of brave stuff, but the thing is, he's also done a lot of bad stuff, and both things can be true at once.
Look, King George V put it in writing that even if someone was to hang for murder, they should be allowed to wear their Victoria Cross. And so that is the standard. We have awarded him the Victoria Cross.
Yep. So that's a really good line in the sand.
He did what he did for that, but he still needs. We're not going to hang him. We're just going to put him in prison. Anyway. Moving on to a disgraceful Australian of significantly less bravery, Nick Adams, who we have duelled with on Twitter back when we were still on that fascist platform, is no longer going to be the US ambassador to Malaysia, Rob.
Yes.
Very sad. He is now going to be a tourism envoy for the United States because Donald Trump thinks he is a sufficiently prodigious bootlicker to be rewarded. Some nominations are too stupid even for the United States Senate, and this one appears to have been quietly killed off in extreme embarrassment. Nick is still deeply toxic, man, working through, working a grift in my opinion, but at least this MAGA nonsense he's been making a buck from is keeping him out of Australia, where we do not miss him.
No.
We're talking about a man who was so obscene that he was kicked out of the Australian Liberal Party, which is our Conservative Party, but he's really making a great career in the US. In other news, we've seen it reported that our mate Nick was responsible for the Trump is Jesus AI slop, which caused quite a ruckus this month, and it's the sort of thing I can imagine him making. And we do have in the slideshow the pictures of Nick doing his thing. Now, Rob, you need to talk about the North Koreans' new tank.
All right, the Norks' new tank gets some more coverage. Red Effect has a good little video on that. Looking different than last time, less like an Abrams and more like a K2 Black Panther. With the fun one part I really enjoyed was Kim Jong-un's daughter having a drive of the tank with daddy sitting on the hull.
Well, it takes one guess who couldn't fit through the hatch, doesn't it, Rob?
I do like that he's setting his daughter up. I mean, can you imagine?
His daughter's the next leader. She's the...
Can you imagine North Korea going to a female leader? That is going to destabilize the country huge. I mean, those nukes are going to be in the next, 20 years? I mean, he's born somewhere in 82, so he's 10 years younger than us. Mm-hmm. So he's probably got another 20 years, maybe 30 years.
He has got gout already, though, with his Swiss cheese eating. But
the point being, he's probably got another 30 years, and then she might take over, or she might knock him off before then. And then who knows what's going to happen, because she'll be needing to maintain her power within a very misogynist bloody environment. And wow, it's going to be crazy times, boys and girls. Anyway,
there's going to be a lot of families strangled the day of the transition, but yeah.
Yes. All right, Ukrainian Leopard 1s.
So Ukrainian Leopard 1 has apparently tanked, as tanks do, 52 drone strikes, which is mostly due to its cope cages and ERA.
And the fact that the drivers were really drunk on vodka?
Hard to say, but anyway, the point is that even a tank with no armour...
Beer and rum is the choice of any sort of sane military of what you want to get your troops drunk on.
Mm-hmm. And in other news, Ukraine has obliterated NATO in the Hedgehog 2025 episode. 10 Ukrainian drone operators eliminated 2 battalions, a British brigade and an Estonian division. Sorry, I should say it was 2 battalions of a British brigade and an Estonian division.
So, I mean, they've got a lot more combat experience.
They do, and it's really showing. And this is like, this is what the modern world means. You need to start adapting, guys. The NATO forces failed to conceal their movements, and a participant said the old maneuver tactics, moving in large daytime convoys, just aren't viable on the battlefield anymore.
Anywhere within, say, like 20 kilometres of the front type thing, you need to be out of that area.
Yeah, or concealed in some way or protected. It's worth noting that...
Trees and mountains, boys and girls. If you can't grow mountains, start planting trees. Start planting trees. Trees will conceal the movements of your tanks, and which is why it becomes a climate change situation, right? Have the trees.
Now, I just want to note the poll has just shifted to 50-50, being Abrams is the greatest versus was the greatest.
Wow,
so,
there we go.
There we go. 22 votes. That's been coming back all show. So I just want to note that the Ukrainian Delta AI system was used. I hit the wrong button.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
he's lost his place, and now he has to dance and say rhubarb, rhubarb, rhubarb. Drink beer.
Alan said at the Paris Union, French Marxist leaders, you trained the Khmer Rouge at the Four Seasons Hotel. Also, John Patton said about, deal with that, Alan. So Delta AI, which is the Ukrainian system for gathering intelligence and coordinating the drones, drove this thing. So it's not just the drones, it's the data synthesis and the system driving that. But while we're on the subject of Ukraine, things appear to be going better on the battlefield for them than they have in a while, although the Russians could just be waiting for the mud to dry out and fighting season to really begin. But worryingly, we're seeing fully autonomous, unmanned vehicles taking and holding ground.
Uncrewed vehicles, John.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Rob. I've failed to be politically correct. Yes. Anyway, but they uncrewed vehicles are taking and holding ground, and I just want to talk about how this is a very bad thing for us ordinary people. In the past, oppressive oligarchs relied on humans to enforce their will on the population. This could be managed with propaganda and indoctrination. So every time someone tells you to hate blue-haired girls with tattoos and piercings, or inducing economic precarity while giving the security services some level of housing and food security, or in the case of the British Empire, shipping troops from region to region, say moving Indians to Fiji and Fijians to the Middle East. But soon the billionaires will be able to deploy legions of murder bots to put down local populations.
Murderbot, good series.
Yeah, good series. Yeah. Populations opposed to data centers stealing all their power and water. And in the past, there was a chance the troops would turn on their masters, but probably not with the bots.
Well, it depends how easily you can hack them.
Well, you won't hack them twice. And if they did turn on their makers, we would have quite another problem on our hands with the AIs. I don't think we're going to look back fondly on this moment, for all that it's great that Ukraine's being able to use these systems to do some stuff.
I mean, they're using a lot of the, they're putting forward the drones, the ground-based drones with tracks, and they'll usually have one controlled by a person, and then the other 3 or 4 drones that'll be rolling up behind with will be AI controlled, in that they'll just be following the one in front. So yes, they'll have a heavy machine gun mounted on the back of these things. They can go in, they can sort out go into the trenches and start shooting up the orcs, the Russians, and sorting them out. The other aspect that they've got for them is they use them for casualty evacuation. So if one of their own soldiers get shot in the trenches, rather than sending a vehicle forward and having 2 people in the vehicle and somebody having to stabilize the person that's been shot, is that they can stabilize them in the trenches, throw them on the back of a drone, a tracked drone, and that tracked drone will then drive them back to a secure area where they can be shipped back to a hospital to get treatment, and that way that casualty evacuation does not become another target for the people who are the doctors or the medics, whatever else, who are looking after that person who's been shot. So there are good uses for them and bad uses for them, I guess. But anyway, There we go. Anyway, but one thing coming out of Ukraine that did make me smile was the new...
Quickly, Rob, just want to thank History of Everything's just dropped us $30. So,
hey, thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll be buying you a beer the next...
some more beers in the next Brumbies game.
Yeah. As long as we're winning and you don't make us lose again. All right. All right. One thing that coming out of Ukraine that did make me smile was the new frontline fashion choice of tactical cat ears.
Yes.
When your world is living in the trenches during a war, whatever can keep you going is worthwhile, even if it's just a pair of camo cat ears that you can stick to the top of your helmet. And when the video came out on April 1st, I thought, seriously, is this a joke? But no, it's just the presenter. I can't remember who it was. I think it was. Can't remember who it was, but anyway, It was a video about it, and they said, look, well, I'm bringing it out because it's not my normal content, but I want to bring it out, and because it's important. And I thought, seeing people, and males and females, putting these things on their helmets because they want to be a person in this war. They want to be recognised and known, and it's not a case of just that they are another body or another whatever else. And so it made me smile. So I was very grateful for that.
I love that humanisation, but I'd still come back to I wish that these people weren't going to die in this horrible, stupid war. But,
if it means that at some stage that their own side sees the tactical cat ears and does not just choose to shoot them because they see them in the dark or whatever else, then hopefully it's providing an idea that, okay, that's who they are.
All right, so meanwhile here in the Western Pacific, the defense of Taiwan has been predicated on the US Indo-Pacific Command having access to 4,000 air-to-surf strike missiles and long-range anti-ship missiles. And they've largely been burned in the Epstein War, and they will take years to restock, which means Taiwan has to be looking at the erratic and transactional operation of the White House and asking if they want to be betting their lives on continued US hegemony. And in particular, you've got the way that the UAE and Saudi Arabia and Kuwait have not been protected in the current war. And
except with the Australian ace,
the Australian wedge-tail,
which is the only one that's flying around. I don't know, because the US ones got blown up.
For some reason, the Iranians haven't hit it yet, but in the next round of fighting, I wouldn't place bets on that. But we're going to close out the show. We've got to the end, and it's been quite a long show considering the halftime interview was short. So I'm sorry, our American friends, but here's something inspiring. Xi Jinping, the leader of China, had this to say about the current crisis. A certain country, obsessed with maintaining its hegemony, has done everything possible to cripple emerging markets and developing nations. Whoever progresses rapidly becomes a target of containment. Whoever catches up becomes a threat. But all of this is futile. The world we live in today is a community with a shared future. People do not want a new Cold War. They want a world of lasting peace and universal security. And this sort of statement, I could imagine many former US presidents making. In fact, I'd go so far as to say all but one of them. It's confirmed, folks. Sorry.
That's right. So that was Xi Jinping. So we're looking at that. And then we'll say, but to finish out this episode, it's confirmed. We're going, we've got the tickets booked and a flight and a flat, and we're off to Cairns for Oz Armour Fest at the end of August. And anyone who wants to ride, look at, listen to, or smell tanks is welcome to join us at the event and the pub each night as we discuss the world and how we could make it a better place. All right?
But mostly we're just talking about tanks and drink beer, and people tell us about all the things we got wrong in the last 80 episodes.
We love hearing how we got stuff wrong. Right? Remember, we're not experts. We're nothing. We're enthusiasts. We just like doing it because we want to hang out together, drink beer, and share it with everybody else. And I'm just hoping that those good vibes go out into the world, and the world needs them right now.
Let's do good vibes and not murder people. Yes, Alan says a great communistic Chinese. Thank you for that. And on this note, the poll has just hit 50-50 again. It's been going up and down.
24 votes.
It's bang on. Abrams is the greatest and was the greatest.
All right. Look, as I said before, it's a great tank. It'll continue being a great tank. And it can be improved, though.
But I would say that for its era, the thing that made it the greatest was a fully separated ammunition scheme, so that the ammunition was not going to cook the tank off. And then it had, the great German gun, and the Honeywell engine was amazing. And the management systems built into it.
Targeting is a huge thing. I mean, when they're actually fighting a war against other tanks, targeting is great. While they're fighting in Ukraine, is that, okay, we're not fighting other tanks. We're fighting buildings. We're fighting trenches. Doesn't do as well as they'd like, but that's life. That's what artillery usually take care of, but they don't have as much.
All right, and on that note,
we'll see you next month.
We really need to but we do love all of you who have listened to this, and obviously, there's 20 odd people who've been through this podcast as a live stream, although apparently 93 people have jumped in and out. But we know there are thousands more who will listen to it otherwise, and we really appreciate you all. And
we hope the Brumbies are winning.
And
they're playing right now.
We hope the Brumbies are winning, and we'll go find out how that's going. All right, folks. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.